How do you call someone out with love instead of judgment?
That's the point, right? So it's like we give them an opportunity to do it first on their own. And after that, if they're still not doing it, we have a real come to Jesus moment. The number one reason people don't achieve their goals is their actions do not match their goals.
Most coaches feel like they can get results, but they don't know what it actually takes. Should you be super supportive and warm and loving like your mom, or be a tough love coach like a drill sergeant who calls people out on everything? What we've learned is that the best coaches have both. You have to be that soft front with empathy, patience, and understanding, and you have to listen to your clients, but you also need to be that firm back, holding people accountable when they're shrinking into fear or pretending they just don't get it or don't understand. Today, Xander and I want to talk about how to balance both. Because if you're only soft, you become like that best friend. And if you're only firm, you become a drill sergeant. And you might get results, but people will hate you. So Xander, this is something that I learned from you about the soft front and firm back. What does that mean?
Yeah. The way I describe the soft front and firm back, it's like I want to be able to give someone a big hug, make them feel loved, make them feel cared for, and then whisper in their ear, "Yo, get the fuck to work." I think that's the best way that I describe it. But it originally came up. I can't remember who recommended it to me, but it was literally a parenting book that was talking about the three types of parenting. There's jellyfish. It's the jellyfish, the brick wall, and then like the grounded parent. And so the jellyfish is essentially like, you're a jellyfish. You've got no backbone. You've got no spine. Your kids will walk all over you, right? And you end up with like those little shits for kids, the ones that are like screaming in the grocery store and they're just like, "Oh, it's okay. I love them." Right. And then the brick wall, like we all know the brick wall. It's like, okay, well, you're going to give structure and discipline and all of those sorts of things, but like there's no love.
The kids are going to call you sir.
The kids are going to call you sir, and they're going to grow up with some serious mommy and daddy issues. And so really it's about finding that balance somewhere in the middle, because when it comes to transformation...
Wait, there was a third one. What was the third one?
Oh, the third one is the balance between the two. So the grounded parent, right? So it is the combination of the soft front and the firm back. The thing I always tell our clients is, transformation only comes when you can only be pushed as far as you feel supported. But if you're supported really far and you're not pushed, you don't go anywhere, right? So you have to have an even balance of support and push. That's where the whole idea came from.
So like, would you say that you'd have two parents and one would be sort of the jellyfish and one would be the drill sergeant? Or do they,
Being that I'm not a parenting expert yet, and Maddie and I are still working on having kids, I don't know if I can speak to that properly, but I maybe you could speak to this better. But I would imagine that's probably not great either, because then you have one person that's the jellyfish and one person that's the brick wall. I guess it kind of gets them there, but then one person feels like they get walked all over and one person feels like a total dick. So I'm guessing you probably both need a little of both.
Yeah. Otherwise the kids just always go to the jellyfish to get whatever they want.
But it is interesting when you talk about it like that, because for example, on our coaching staff, we do that a little bit. Now nobody is just straight jellyfish and straight brick wall, but like on our coaching staff, right? We have in HIC we have three full-time coaches on the team, plus myself, plus our mindset coaches and yourself and Kahal helping out with marketing and sales and sort of things, right? And a lot of the times our point coaches with our clients can take a little bit of a softer approach. They can be, they can have a little bit, more softness to them, because they know if they ever need to, they can lean back on me or you or Kahal to just, be a bit firmer. So it's not necessarily 50-50. It's more like, I'd say, for the point person, it might be more like a 30-70, 30% backbone, 70% jellyfish. And like, for me, it's kind of flipped, right? So it's like, there's an escalation process there within the company, so they get an even flow of each.
All right. So just rephrasing this. So the soft front is like, everything's going to be okay. Like, I feel your pain. I'm kind of with you, and
you're the listener, you're caring, you're on their side, you're supporting. It really is that kind of like supportive, love you no matter what sort of energy.
So that's the soft front, and the firm back is like, here's the list of things to do, do it or shut the hell up.
Like, get to work. This is what needs to be done. Go.
Which one comes more naturally to you?
Which one comes more naturally to you?
Definitely the firm back.
Mine's the opposite. Mine's definitely the soft front.
It's interesting. I think for me, when I think about the idea of coaching somebody, it's like, okay, you came to me to get an outcome. Let's focus on that outcome. Let's get to that outcome. And here's the 5 steps to do the outcome.
But I think that's why you get such good results with people, because for you, you're really focused on the result.
Right.
And it's very clear. It's very simple. There's no bullshit in the way. I think for me, I mean, I'm a people pleaser at heart. I think a lot of coaches are people pleasers at heart. So I think they start from the other side, right? I think this is one of the things I love about you is like, you are not a people pleaser at heart. But like, I think for most coaches, they just want to feel loved. They want to feel connected. That's what gets them into the coaching space to begin with, right? They want to connect with people. They want to help people. But because of that, a lot of them are really, really good at the soft front, like connecting, establishing a relationship, genuinely caring. But when it comes to actually holding a firm line, like, no, this is not okay. Like, we need to get to work, right? That's a lot more difficult for them. That was always really difficult for me when I first started.
Yeah. So you're more of a, like you said, a people pleaser. Like, how does that, like, how are you? Just my brain is breaking. It's like, how do you coach? You can't just hug people to results, right?
Honestly, it took work, right? And I think for most, I didn't start out this way. I think it's funny because like all of our clients that, know me from our coaching calls and things like that, they would think that I have like a very strong frame and I'm a really firm person, but the reality is I'm not. That is a created behavior. I think it was like Tony Robbins once said, like, the Tony Robbins you see on stage is a person I made up, right? It's a person I made up because that's what my audience needed, right?
The alter ego effect.
Yeah, it's kind of like this alter ego thing. It's like, for me, I was afraid of people judging me. I was, when I was talking to people about enrolling in our programs or holding strong boundaries with our clients, I had a mentor once tell me, he said, Xander, your clients didn't hire you to have another friend. They don't need another friend. They have plenty of friends, and all of those friends have continued to help them stay stuck where they're at. They need a leader, right? They need someone different. And I think that was kind of the first time for me that I realized, look, being a coach and being that leader for them is not about telling them what they want to hear. It's about telling them what they need to hear. And when you're telling someone what they need to hear, there's a lot of the time that they are not going to be happy with it. It's going to strike a chord. It's going to create some friction or something like that. But that's what they need. They need someone who's going to be willing to stand in that space and tell them what they need to hear, even if they don't want to, because that's going to be what's going to actually evoke change and transformation.
Hey, man, you don't have to convince me. Like, okay, so you came at this with this sort of soft front. Tell me about a time when you were like too soft with a client.
Oh man, I could think of so many. I think when I was first starting, I can't remember every single client when I was first starting, but I remember when I was first starting, I had so many clients that loved working with me, right? And a lot of them got great results, but some of them didn't. And I was always wondering why, right? It was like, I'm giving you the tactics, I'm giving you the tools, I'm giving you everything you need. And you're clearly like loving working with me. You want to keep working with me and you want to pay me. But my expectations of where they should have been was not where they actually were. And I realized very quickly that I had created a comfort zone for them, right? Their comfort zone was in hiring me, paying me, pretending like they were doing the work, right? Investing in themselves, paying me, pretending like they were doing the work, but not actually practicing it and getting out of their comfort zone. And I think what happened is there was a point when I remember this was like within my first year as a coach, there was a point when I had 2 clients that had, they'd been working with me for maybe like 6 months and they just were not where I wanted them to be. And I think something happened where like I got super frustrated. And it wasn't anything on their fault. It was because my coaching was not good enough for them, right? And I got super frustrated and it ended up kind of being like this like rigid, like what the fuck is going on here moment. And they were so caught off guard by it because they were used to this very soft jellyfishy Xander, right? And all of a sudden it like went from jellyfish to like Stonewall immediately.
Yeah.
Right. And I realized, well, 2 things happened, right? That Stonewall came up and it created so much more friction. And it was like, oh my God, am I going to lose these clients now? Like I just almost had like an outburst on them. Right? And basically what happened is like, they actually got their shit together and they started doing the work. And I was like, wait, you mean I can have a really uncomfortable moment where nobody's happy, right? But then we can work through this conflict and it can turn into something good. And I purposefully did this a couple more times where I was like, I'm going to go have this like come to Jesus moment with a couple more of my clients and just see what comes from it. And same thing. It was really uncomfortable. It was really firm. It made me want to like retract into my shell because as a people pleaser, I'm like, oh my God, they're not going to love me anymore. And like both of those times, like they moved forward better than they were before. And so I then took this idea and started to be like, well, what if I just brought that firmness earlier on in the conversation? What would happen? Right? Rather than just being the friend, what if I brought that firmness all the way up to the front? What would happen? And people just started to get better and better results. For me, it wasn't natural, but it was like it was accidental at first. And then I realized it got better results. So I started to bring that firmness earlier on and it just got better and better.
That makes a ton of sense. And as you described that, I mean, honestly, Xander, that's how I got to the point where I started to be more firm.
Yeah.
I come from a service background, right? Like one of my first jobs was working at Toys R Us.
I did not know you worked at Toys R Us. Really?
Yeah, I worked at Toys R Us and I was like doing customer service during Christmas. People want the red Power Ranger. They have to have that thing. And you know, you're just kind of
I remember my parents bought me my first bike at Toys R Us. I remember, and it was for Christmas. I remember that. I also remember that we came out from Toys R Us with my brand new bike and somebody had stolen our car. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother time that created all sorts of money issues for me to work through. But back to your Toys R Us story.
Wow. Okay. So anyways, I basically back then, I don't know if they do this now, but back then you went through like 2-3 weeks of training on customer service before you even get put on the floor. Right. And well, I know it's not true because they're out of business, but I don't know if many businesses do that now, but it was just like, that was one of my first jobs. And it was it wasn't, you know, I had done some other stuff before, but I had never had that extensive training. So I always thought like working just meant customer service. Customer's always right.
Yeah. Customer's always right. Yeah.
Like do whatever you can to make them happy. So when I started the business, that's what I did. You know, customer's always right. Hey, hey, you want a 6 a.m. class? Great. I'll do a 6 a.m. class. I had a guy that was like, I can only come at 4:30 a.m. You know, can I pay you to do 4:30 a.m.? I mean, I got a full-time job and a kid, but this is fine.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it. Sounds great.
Yeah. 4:15. Let's make it happen. I'll get it, make it happen for you. And I would do everything for them. But one thing that happened, and this is sort of a gradual process, is like, we were pretty low ticket. So we had a variety of clients coming through and I would put everything into every client. And no matter how much service I gave them, they would still leave at the same rate as everyone else. And it was just kind of like, I could do the 4:30 a.m. thing. And then the guy says, well, my knee hurts or whatever. I'm going to take 6 weeks off. And then I'd never see him again. And it was just like, like I'm putting all this effort and bending over backwards to make these customers happy. And then they still leave. Even worse than that, I would have customers that would come in and they'd be like, I really want to lose weight. And I give them this whole plan. I mean, I did all this shit. And I give them this whole plan and then they wouldn't follow it. And I just thought, this isn't working. Like I can't coach people this way. So you're going to love this, Xander. I created something called the No Excuses Challenge.
For your clients or for you?
No, for the clients. I said, okay, this is 30 days. You got to do all of these things. And if you don't do a thing, then you have to do like 100 burpees or something.
Yeah.
Right?
So it's just straight accountability.
Straight accountability. I charged more for it. People signed up for it. I had 50 people do it. And there were like maybe 5 people that did the whole 30 days without missing a single day. There were like another 10 or 15 people that did it and missed a couple days and had to do burpees. And then the rest of the people dropped out. But all of the people that did the thing, unless they dropped out in the first week, all of them were like, that's the best challenge I've ever done. And so I was like, oh, okay. Switch flipped. I'm going to be the other kind of coach now.
It's funny because like people always say that they're looking for someone to like, be in their corner and connect with and things like that. But truly like people are looking for a leader. Like they want someone to help lead them. That takes accountability, that takes firmness, that takes strength. Right. And I think that's an important part of this is like, we have to be able to do that as coaches. As coaches, by definition, we are leaders. So by the way, you're telling me that you weren't always this firm, strong, accountable Jay. You were a soft, squishy jellyfish at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ask my kids. But you know, part of it is I look at how I kind of talk to myself and how I handle my own stuff, and it's like, you know, I find that I'm more on track when I'm holding myself accountable. When I'm just like, yeah, I don't want any excuses. I'm going to do these 3 things that I had on my list.
Has there ever been a time where you felt you have been too firm?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it got to a point where it was just like, okay, great, this works. And so I'm going to use it with everyone.
Yeah.
But like, not everyone is
Jay Williams.
Yeah, not everyone's ready for that. And it can send people into a dark place if you're just like, yeah, do this thing or else. And then they have all this trauma and stuff that comes up from their childhood, and they actually need someone to just, relate to them and like understand how they're feeling. It kind of got to a point where it was like, well, certain type of clients just aren't going to work well with me, because I would say things like, okay, I gave you 2 or 3 tasks last week, right? Did you get them done? Yes or no? And the answer would be no. And it's like, okay, well, why not? Well, because I had, the kids going back to school. I had, I got sick, I got this and I got that. And then I'd start digging in and kind of handling this like, okay, well, what did you get done during those times? Oh, I got this and this done. Okay, great. Well, why couldn't you get this done? Yeah. And I'd start to like ask all these questions and then be like, this is too overwhelming. I can't handle it.
Yeah.
I find that what I had to do was set the expectation a lot clearer at the beginning. Like, I am going to hold you accountable.
I am going to be firm with you. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, exactly. And if you're not, then that's okay.
You're right. When it comes to getting results with clients, everybody's different, right? And I think as a coach, when you're first starting off, right? Like, in our company, like I know, for example, you and I tend to have a bit of a more firmer approach, right? And I know, Rahan might be a little bit more of a softer approach, right? And Carter can be firmer, and Bahir might be firmer, but Jordan might be a little bit softer. And so like we can kind of pair people up with who's going to work best with them at that moment, right? And if they need a firmer hand, we can have this person support or whatever, and we can kind of do that. When you're first starting off, when you're the only coach, you kind of have to develop the skills, like you mentioned, to be able to handle anyone, right? And it's like the 2 ways that you do that is like, number one, you get really good at spotting what type of people there are, right? There's, like when we bring people through our programs, we literally like pair them with like one of 4 different types of avatars, depending on like their strength of masculine and feminine energy and like their tendencies for action versus procrastination and stuff, right? And so like we can kind of find that person and like know how to coach them specifically. But more importantly, it's like you just set the expectations up front, right? It's like, hey, like, I'm gonna be firm with you and I want you to be okay with that. It's not because I don't love you. I love you. I want results for you, right? And if you feel like I'm not in your corner, it's not because I'm not in your corner. Just because you're feeling like I'm not in your corner, but I promise you I'm in your corner, right? Yeah. But I'm going to push you because that's what you need. And if you can get that agreement up front, if you can set that expectation, then when you have those difficult conversations, your clients don't run away. They don't go, oh, Xander was a dick, right? Sometimes they think it in their head, but they're like, no, I needed this.
But I think it's, when you're first starting off, it's like, I think it does make sense to approach this with a service oriented mindset.
Yeah.
But also think about like, how are we going to get the results? And, one of the kind of tools that I figured out is like on every coaching call or every coaching interaction, I would ask the client to remind me what their goals are.
Yeah.
I would kind of come in with a little more, this is more like mature version of me. I would come in with a little more of like a soft front. And then I would ask them, okay, remind me, like, what is your goal right now? And if they say something different than the last time, then I'll say, oh, okay, well, last time you said it was this. Has that changed? What happened?
Why? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's, I think you're right. Like at the beginning, when you're doing it by yourself, you have to be able to sort of balance.
Yeah. And you bring it up a good point too. Cause like on any call, it's like that whole idea of like, people they don't care what you know until they know that you care. Always giving your client space to voice themselves and communicate first. That's the soft front, right? And so it's like, come in, give them a hug, let them voice their concerns, all the shit that's going wrong, right? And then you can come in with the firmer, like, okay, here's what we need to do. Let's do this. Let's get to work. Let's go.
Yeah, we went to a mastermind recently, and I don't remember who was speaking, but it was kind of a reminder, like, retention, meaning keeping your clients, comes down to results plus relationship.
Yeah, you need both.
Got to get results for them, or else, they're just paying to be your friend. But you also need to have a relationship with them.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it's like as soon as you say that, like I can think of the different communities and programs that I've been a part of that were like really heavy on the relationships, and like it was rah, yeah, oh my God, everybody feels connected. This is amazing. And then nobody got results. And then there were other organizations and masterminds and programs that I've been a part of where it was like just straight shit to it. Like, this is it, go do it. And there was no connection and it wasn't fun. And like, I would do those and maybe I'd be in those communities for a year or something like that. And I get results, but then I'd leave because it's just not how I wanted to spend my time.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you really do need both.
It's this idea of like, you look at the life of a billionaire and it's like, okay, I could be a billionaire if I do all the things that they do, but am I going to be miserable as a
But that might really suck. I don't know if I want that. Yeah.
So, okay. So since you're coming from a little bit of the sort of softer side, how do you know when someone is genuinely struggling versus like when they're making excuses?
I think for me, if they're making excuses, I think that is a genuine struggle. It's just an internal struggle. I do tend to lean towards the simple, just take the action strategy first, right? So we'll use an example. Like, let's say you want to launch a coaching business and you know that you're going to need to, post on social media regularly, right? So like, I might set our client an accountability goal of like, just post every day this week, right? It's a very simple goal. Right. And I'm not going to dig into, their family traumas or anything like that. It's just like post every day this week. Right. Okay. They didn't do it. So the next week is like, okay, like you mentioned, why? Let's see what comes up. What prevented it from happening? We can dig into that. We have a lot of, kind of laser coaching questions and strategies to dig into there. But one of the simplest things is like, okay, well, like you mentioned, have them get clear on their goals, have them get clear on, what they need to do to get there. And then have them be part of the process of designing those actions. Okay, I do need to post every single day this week. And then set some form of accountability for it. Very, very simple. Like, okay, I know I need to post every day this week. So what are you going to do if you don't? We have our clients do this all the time where they'll go in our community and they'll post in our community and they'll say things like, I'm going to post on my Instagram every day this week, or I will pay $100 to the first 5 people that comment in this post. So now they have social accountability. They've told the community. And they also have like the pain of if they don't do it, they're going to have to pay $500 to people in the community for not doing it. And so in general, that starts to get people moving, right? Because, I think a lot of people are like, but Thander, I have so many mindset blocks. I have so many limiting beliefs that are preventing me from taking action. I need to go work on my mindset blocks. And I'm like, yes, that's true. At the same time, if you just set up simple accountability, you can go do it regardless of your mindset blocks. Right. And once you start moving forward, the mindset blocks start to disappear. That's the fastest way to get rid of a mindset issue is take action in opposition of the mindset issue. It's like if you're standing at the top of a high dive, you don't and you want to jump off the high dive, but you're scared. You don't climb down the high dive and go, Dad, I need therapy. I'm scared to jump off the high dive. I need to do 17 sessions of therapy before I can finally jump. No, you just fucking jump off the high dive. And then once you've jumped, you're like super excited. You're like, oh my God, that was so much fun. You climb up to the top of the high dive. And even though you're scared a second time, you just do it again because you know it's not an issue.
My favorite part is the voices. You have different voices for different excuse levels.
But so the easiest thing is like, I always just take the easy route first, which is just accountability. Just take the action, right? It's so easy to just set accountability for someone and get them to take the action. And that actually solves probably 90% of people is like simple accountability. This is the most simple tool to use in your coaching arsenal. And most coaches don't do it because they're like, oh, I'm too conscious for accountability, right? If I need to use accountability, it's like, no, your subconscious brain is 95% subconscious mind. So I don't care how conscious the 5% is. The 95% is dumb as donkeys. So treat them like donkeys.
I'm going to tell the editors to take each of the voices and stitch them together into, and we'll just sound like excuses from a whole bunch of different coaches.
Perfect.
So okay, so you've given someone accountability. They said they were going to do it. They didn't do it again. How do you call someone out with love instead of judgment? How do you?
I think that's the point, right? So it's like we give them an opportunity to do it first on their own, take full ownership. Then we give them accountability. And after that, if they're still not doing it, we have a real come to Jesus moment. The first thing that we'll do is kind of sit them down and be like, you said that your goal is 30K per month, but you're acting like a broke 9-to-5er. Why? Tell me. Like, give them an opportunity to explain their actions, because if you're saying one thing but you're acting another way, there's something in the way, right? The number one reason people don't achieve their goals is their actions do not match their goals. That's it. We'll just kind of ask them and we'll kind of explain. And a lot of the times they've just become detached from their goal, right? Maybe they don't believe it anymore. Maybe they don't realize that they're not connecting with it or whatever it might mean. But a lot of the time, like you mentioned, there's probably something real, genuinely, subconscious programming or limiting belief that is deep seated, a childhood, something their dad told them when they were 6. Or great example, like you're 6 years old, you go to buy your first bike from Toys R Us. First time your parents are getting you a really nice gift, and you walk outside and the car's fucking stolen, right? All of a sudden,
we're all piling on this bike.
You create this belief, like little Xander, that when your family goes to give you something amazing that costs money, it costs the family everything. And so for me, I created these beliefs around like, I'm never in want. Nobody should ever give to me because something I'm taking from them, something bad's going to happen to them, right? We all have these programs. And so if they're not getting results from the simple accountability, it gets about 95% of people moving, then we start to dig into the psychosomatic work, the deep subconscious work, and we'll put a pause on kind of the firm back approach, and we'll just really kind of open up the support, see what else we can uncover to move through there before we kind of bring back the accountability.
One thing I love about the way you described that is, as you were describing the client who wasn't doing the thing, there was no sense of judgment. Like,
no,
that client sucks, or I suck as a coach because they aren't doing the thing. It sort of feels like curiosity, like, this is interesting. I wonder why that happened. They said they wanted one thing, they did a different thing.
But it has to be, right? Because nobody's ever intentionally like, I don't want to achieve my dreams. Like nobody ever sits down and is like, I'm going to fight you to the death, Xander. I don't want to achieve my dreams at all. They all want to achieve their dreams. They just don't know what's getting in the way. And I think that's part of the problem sometimes with like the coaching client relationship is sometimes you feel like you're sitting on the opposite sides of a table and you're trying to fight them almost, when the reality is if you just get up from your side of the table and go get on their side of the table and sit down with them, it becomes teamwork.
That's it. That's so good. I mean, I've trained a lot of coaches, and one of the things that's hardest is to get them to not take their clients' actions personally.
It's not about you. It's never about you.
Yeah.
Which is hard sometimes because your clients will try to make it about you.
Yes, exactly. And they will push your buttons in a way that you couldn't imagine. They see all your buttons and they push them all, and then you get triggered. And then,
what's this chord? Bring. What's this one? Bring.
What are some signs for you? Like you mentioned a couple of things, but what are some signs for you that a client is just like shrinking into fear and it's time to like, jump in and do some of that work?
It always comes back to action. I think in the end, right? Like everything that we want to achieve is driven by action, right? We have to take action to achieve the things that we want in life. And so if we are not acting, if we are not moving, if we are not taking action, then there's a reason. And so that kind of it's like we've talked about, either there's too much fear, too much disbelief getting in the way, or there's not enough support to help them feel safe enough going further out on that ledge, or there's a disconnect from the goal of where they're trying to get to, right? And so all of these things are kind of the possibilities, but the easiest thing to see is they're not taking action. Like if someone's taking action and they're not getting a result, there's not necessarily a problem there. There's just more experimentation that needs to be happening for you to figure it out. But if someone's not taking the actions you need to, that's when you really start to go, okay, we got to figure something out. We got to do something different here.
I actually believe that action kind of leads to all the other stuff. But I'm curious for, what is it? The cognitive behavioral therapy. It's like
event leads to thoughts, thoughts leads to feelings, feelings leads to actions, actions leads to a new event or outcome.
Yes. For me, I always believe like if you take the action, then you'll start to kind of justify it with your thoughts and your feelings. And then it creates a sort of virtuous cycle. So I've always just focused on action first. How do you kind of approach that? I mean, is that the same?
I think there's several points in the cycle to break it, honestly, because even like I would ask you, around that one, well, like at some point you had to have a thought around, okay, even though I'm feeling this way, I'm still going to take the action.
Right.
So it's like, well, then where did that thought come from? maybe from a previous action, or it's something, right? So there's several places in which you can kind of break that cycle, but you're right.
You know what it is? This is where the firm back comes from. If I decide I'm going to do it, then that means that I don't have any feelings or thoughts about it. it's
just the outcome. Yeah. You've become unattached from the emotion side of it.
Yeah. So if I decide 2 weeks, then it doesn't matter how much sleep I had. It doesn't matter what time I went to bed. It doesn't matter how I feel. I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. for the next 2 weeks. And then I can decide after 2 weeks whether I want to continue it or not. But it's like, this is like, for me, just a system where it's like, I made this decision. Now it's made, and I did it with a clear mind and a clear head and all this other stuff. That's where the thoughts and feelings come. And then it's just like autopilot.
The problem with that, there's not a problem with that. It's a good thing. The problem with that is that works well for a high masculine energy, because a high masculine energy, truth, is very objective, right? Truth does not have an emotion attached to it.
Right.
For a high feminine energy, truth is closely tied to how you feel about it.
Right.
So integrity with a higher feminine energy actually has more to do with how you feel about something. So you can make the objective decision to wake up at 4 in the morning for the next 2 weeks. And as a higher feminine energy, if you wake up one morning and you're feeling like this was the worst decision ever, like I need at least 1 more hour of sleep, it would actually be out of integrity for you to just continue to wake up as a higher feminine energy. So it's an interesting dynamic when you start to study the masculine versus the feminine. But to your point, like what gets results, again, and I know we'll probably have a whole podcast on this, but like the idea of results and goals at its most basic nature is a masculine concept.
Right.
Like achieving goals, solving problems, action orientation, moving things forward is a masculine concept. Feminine concept is being in flow, being in love, being connected, right? And so the act of building a business is a more masculine energy. It doesn't mean that higher feminine energies can't do it, but you have to lean into the masculine side of things to do it. So to your point, like when it comes to building a business or when it comes to achieving goals, we have to be able to lean into that masculine side of it, which is emotional detachment from the outcome, do it whether or not it feels good. And it's much easier for someone like you who naturally has a higher masculine energy versus someone who might have a higher feminine energy. It's a bit more difficult for that person because it literally feels out of integrity. Maddie and I have conversations about this stuff all the time. She's like, I know that this is in integrity because objectively, I know that that's the truth.
To be clear, it's not easy for me.
It's never easy. It's never easy.
I mean, you were doing that thing where you were climbing steps or running or whatever with weighted vest for days. It's like, it's not easy. It's just like you've decided, so you're going to do it.
I think that's a good point because you can do that whether you're a higher masculine or a higher feminine energy. You can make that decision. And in making that decision, you're strengthening that muscle, that capability of being like, I have a high, it's the word, I got this one from Jack Canfield. The word is high intention, low attachment. So it's like, I have a very high intention around doing this thing and a lot of energy going into this thing. And I'm going to be very unattached around how it feels or what's going on in the process. We're just going to go do the thing.
Yeah. And that's actually a great way to describe it because I, over the years, have become less attached to the outcome and more attached to the process. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this thing, whether I get there or not is like, okay, yeah, maybe I had a bad month or something and I didn't get there, but I'm going to do the work to get there.
That also makes it a lot more fun, which, when you look at it that way, it's like that when we work with a higher feminine energy, that's one of the things that we suggest they do is attach more to the process, learn, rather than the outcome, because that really works for a feminine energy. So I always tell people, like, if you want to run a marathon, right? And you're just focused on the outcome of running a marathon. Well, if you go try and run a marathon and you fail, like, you feel terrible. You beat yourself up. If you achieve the marathon, as soon as you get across the line, you're like, oh my God, I'm exhausted, but that was great. I feel super accomplished, right? It's good. But if instead you just learn to love running, right? Well, then whether you fail or whether you don't, you're going to run a far distance and you're going to enjoy the entire process. But more likely than not only are you going to complete the marathon, but you'll actually keep going because you actually love running. And so this is why some of our female coaches are some of the most successful coaches we have, because they learn to love the process, not just the outcome.
What you're telling me is that I'm tapping more into my feminine energy right now. Yeah, great.
Good work.
So when you're coaching people, so kind of to wrap this up, when you're coaching people, like, how do you read that? I mean, it's just like, when do you know, how do you know when to push and when to sort of support? How do you sort of read?
Experiment.
You try giving them the stick, and then you
100. I think so. 100%. Right. I mean, so there was an interview that Tony Robbins did once, and he said, when you've coached as many people as I have, nothing's new. Right. Like he has seen the same patterns, if you will, play out thousands of times in different, like, it doesn't matter how unique of a snowflake you think you are. Tony Robbins has seen you 1,000 times. And so part of it is the more people you work with, it's like, at this point, when I work with someone, like as soon as I'm talking to someone, as soon as I've got them on video or something, there's like a 98% chance I know exactly what to do with this person. But in the beginning, I didn't know that. Right. And you kind of have to like test, and you have to play around. And I think it comes back to being curious. I remember one time when Maddie and I were, I think she had just moved to the States. We were probably within our first year of dating. And I was on a Q&A, and I think I leaned in really hard into a couple of people on the Q&A. And after, Maddie was listening in the background, and afterwards Maddie goes like, I think you went way too hard on that. I was like, oh, really? And I like listened back to it, and I was like, oh yeah, I went way too hard on that. But it was like, I had to learn that. I had to, if you want to find the line, if you want to get good at walking this, this balance beam, this tightrope, there's going to be a couple of times that you probably cross the line, right? Because otherwise you'll never find the line. So I think it's going to, and then, being able to be like, okay, we overstepped, let's bring it back. It's not the end of the world. Like, most of the time when you overstep with a client, when you realize it and you bring it back, they become a stronger client.
Yeah. Being
willing to get in there with the trenches with them and figure that out and bring it back. Like, that's when they go, okay, Xander really cares. Like, it's not going to just overstep and then just be like, screw this, I'm out. He's going to overstep, realize it didn't work and bring it back.
What I love about that is part of it is just leaning into your own fear. Like, you're probably going to make mistakes with your clients.
Every single one of these, by the way, is like me leaning into my fears, because again, let's go back to the beginning of it. I'm a people pleaser. So anytime that I have to have a firm still to this day, 8 years later, anytime I have a firm conversation with a client, I'm like, are they going to hate me?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like leaning into your fears, and you're going to make mistakes, but as long as you're willing to kind of stick with that client, then you can kind of balance it out and you will get more clients. Just one last question. If you were going to recommend a book, since you're coming a little more from the soft front side, and let's say somebody like me who's coming from the firm back, like the drill sergeant, is there a book you'd recommend that I read and like I sort of identify with to help me kind of soften up a little bit?
I don't know, because I never had to go that route. I had to go the other route, right? So I can say if you're a people pleaser like me, right? There's a lot of great books that kind of help you firm up a bit. One of my favorites that I kind of always go back to is Tim Grover's Relentless. It is just a very, very firm, masculine-oriented book. And again, great whether you're a masculine-oriented or feminine-oriented. I don't agree with half the shit in that book.
But you kind of do. You kind of agree with it, though.
I kind of do. But I do. But whenever I need to get myself further into that firm back, even if I don't mentally agree with some of the ideology of it, like reading the book helps me get back into that firm energy. Same thing with Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. I think that one's another great one as well. Yeah, honestly, I'll have to think of some ones to help you get softer, Jay, but I can't think of any off the top of my mind right now.
It's funny because Relentless, there's part of it, I gotta go highlight it, but there's a part of that book where he works with professional basketball players, they get paid millions of dollars to be athletes. And they come to him and they're like, I need to lose 40 pounds to before the season starts. And he gives them a routine, and then they, after 3 days, they want to quit. And he's just like, look, man, you either want to do this or you don't. Like, quit wasting my time. Like, that's the kind of coach that he is.
Yeah, I got to speak on stage with Tim Grover once, and I remember it was so funny. There was a guy that stood up in the audience, like 600 or 700 people, guy stood up in the audience and was like, do you mind if I give you some feedback on because he was a speaking coach. He's like, do you mind if I give you some feedback on your talk? And he was like, all right, go for it, man. And Tim was like, he was kind of like pacing around the stage the whole time. The guy's like, it's as a speaking coach, I always tell my clients, find a good place to plant and do this, and really emphasize. It's a bit hard to pay attention as you're kind of moving around the whole time. And Tim goes, motherfucker, I'm a shark. And if I stop moving, I fucking die. So sit back down or I'll eat you or something. It was like ridiculous. I was like, okay, that's the Tim Grover energy. There we go.
Yeah, it's that really like take it or leave it kind of approach. I guess so. Then I'll recommend one for somebody that maybe wants to work a little more on the softer side. It's called the coaching habit.
Hey, see, I knew you would know one because I've never had to work on the softer side.
And it just teaches you questions that you can ask as a coach. Right. It's just like, here's 7 questions, and it basically like lays it out. Like, these are the questions you should ask on a coaching call.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just open-ended. You can also look at, there's like a technique called motivational interviewing that is kind of adjacent to that book. But that book kind of makes it really succinct. 7 questions you can ask on a coaching call that will help people kind of, do that sort of emotional dump that sometimes people need to do so that they can take the action.
So that you can then be firmer with them afterwards.
Yeah, so that you can just say, motherfucker, do what, yeah.
I'm a shark, and if I stop moving, I die.
Awesome. All right, we'll end it there. If someone wants to work with us, go ahead and click the link below. And if you're listening on the podcast, go to xanderfryer.com/apply, and you can apply to work with Xander and the team.
Yeah, thanks.